agenda, how we will proceed today. We will have a short presentation by our team from the BCG. And therefore, before we begin, let me introduce the panelists, not that you do not know. President ACMA, because she's the front face of ACMA, and we have two very excellent knowledge partners joining us. We have Saurabh Chhatr. He is Managing Director of BCG in India, and we have Mr. Dash, Prabhu Dash, partner, and I'm being Mehta. So the agenda will be that our friends from BCG will make a short presentation. If you guys were in the morning session, then it's a revision for you. So, but we will do that, and then I'll invite the President ACMA to make a few comments, and that's how we'll do. And then in the end, we'll take some questions. So there we go, and you can start from.
So I'll keep it short and fast. If you want me to stop somewhere, pause somewhere, I'm happy to take further questions on that. Just at the outset, I think the industry has made strides in terms of what we produce, what we export. Today we are at a position where we're $74 billion in the industry size, employing 5 million people, and of course contributing to India's overall manufacturing as a hub story. Very quickly on the auto component specifically from an export point of view, if you look at the growth of import versus growth of export over the last 5 years, our exports has grown at a 7.5% growth rate compared to imports only at 3%, which has led to a situation where we are now net trade positive. It's one of the few sectors in India in manufacturing that is net trade positive today. In fact, when we looked at auto-specific end use cases, we are actually much better when you look at end auto companies, OEMs, and Tier 1s, what they import versus what they export. Actually, the delta is much higher at roughly $0.5 to $1.5 billion. Now, just stepping back, looking at the global trade is massive at $1.2 trillion. It is organized across roughly 12 trade clusters which are shaped around the tariffs and regional FTAs. And of the $1.2 trillion, half of it, which is $595 billion, is actually in the inter-cluster or far shore trade, which is going from, let's say, India to Europe, India to US. Of course, of this, the two big entities or the two big importers are Europe and North America. Europe roughly importing $151 billion and North America at $170 billion. And that presents a massive opportunity for India to grow further from the $20 billion we're today to the aspiration that the industry has set for itself at $100 billion. Now, as you look at where we are in the moment in the overall auto industry, there are few discontinuums happening. There is electrification, depending on the pace of it, but it is eventually going to at least have 50% share across the plug-ins and hybrids combined. Paired with that, there is increasing electronification of the cars. We are having more ADAS, connected tech, telematics, etc. in the vehicle. There is also focus on lightweighting the vehicle, both for carbon emission reduction as well as improving the range on the EV side. And paired with that, there is a supply chain shift that has already been underway. Plus, with the tariffs that are being shaped now, will further be, revisited by a few OEMs and Tier 1s. With that as the context, if you look at where can this $100 billion aspiration come from, what do we need to focus on? There are, roughly $40 to $60 billion of it can come from further accelerating in the components where we are already exporting today. These are the classical components that are being exported today for ICE vehicles, will continue to probably remain for the EVs. And there is probably $10 to $15 billion of additional we can focus on the EV and electronic component side, which can add to that. Of course, North America, Europe, two geographies being very large and large importers net overall, with us increasing share against some of the other exporters into the geography, will be the priority market for India to focus on. Now, as it stands from a cost competitiveness point of view, this is a global analysis of looking at where we are today vis-a-vis other geographies that are top exported to some of the US and Germany markets. We believe, at least from a cost competitiveness point of view, there are many places we have seen signs of India being cost competitive, and hence there is an opportunity that we can now enter and tap into. And this is also recognized when you look at the global CPOs. Many of them actually recognize this. Roughly 80% of them, of the 40 global CPOs across OEMs and tier ones that I spoke to, are already buying from India or are looking to actually increase their share of purchase from India, and hence it's an opportune moment for the industry overall. Having said that, when you ask them what is it that will take the industry from good to great, what are the areas that India should focus on, there is a large opportunity for India to step up on the technology and engineering. Also, there is an opportunity in terms of having presence in the target geographies across both warehouse as well as having a team on engineering, sales, services side is something that the OEMs are expecting and looking for from the Indian component players. Quality, as we also discussed earlier, is one of the areas, but we have made strides on that as an industry overall. Now we are at a level where more OEMs are actually believing India having superior quality than not. Now just, hence looking at all the three things, there is a large $595 billion opportunity out there. There is a strong starting point where we are now net trade surplus and probably higher in the auto and niche case. Plus global OEMs looking to having more share of purchase and looking at India's role in the global value chain. What will it take for us to achieve this? There are broadly three themes or three pillars. There is a pillar around, now that we have localized a few components, what will it take for us to become the global hub for auto components from India? It has of course an element around looking at what role does India play in the global value chain. Also looking at Indian auto component, how can you unlock scale and access for them to global markets. There is the element around, if you look at the engineering and NPD capabilities, can we actually figure out a way for the testing validation centers, the tooling capacity, etc. to be unlocked at an auto cluster level, where in each auto cluster we can have world-class capabilities across this. Paired to that is the scaling agenda that I think, of course, the industry is already working on. And the last element is more for India to have a larger play in the R&D side. There is a fair amount of partnership or engineering partnership that can happen through tech parks. There is a local capability build, and increasing this access and indigenous technology build out is something that the industry can focus on, while also preparing itself for the ESG and sustainability that is in the course of action. This is just a summary for the industry in terms of what all muscles that is within industries for you to build across all the same areas, across engineering, NPD, looking at automation and industry 4.0, looking at how to drive the innovation roadmap both through tech partnership as well as local investment with academia and startups, how to expand their presence in these geographies, also lead on ESG and sustainability. And paired with that, there are a few opportunities that we think will emerge from a new business model standpoint, particularly shared tool room as a service, where we can unlock the tool room, modernize them, and give access to the cluster on that basis. I think that was the summary of it. Net, there is a massive opportunity. We are in a strong position given we have already achieved the net trade surplus. There is a discontinuity in global trade, and hence we believe we are positioned well to actually target the aspiration that we have set for ourselves of $100 billion exports.
Today, so I think Prabhu's covered everything, but just a few pointers from our end. As you know, that our sector now is trade positive. Even though it's a small number, it's 300 million. But the rate of growth of export is much larger or much better than the rate of growth of import, and that's the good news. So, but when we look at the global numbers, I think in the global numbers, our export to the US, which stands at about $6 billion, is only 4% or roundabouts of their total buying, which goes to show how much room we have to expand. So, along with BCG, what is it that we were trying to, actually dig out and this, and sort of direct as a way forward? There are a lot of opportunities, and we bucketed them. First is on the classic components. We believe that there is a potential of at least $40 to $60 billion, as he said, in the old classical traditional components for export. Then these are around 11 product families. We've also said that there is the emerging components, which is in the EV space and electronic space. That's another 15 to 20 billion, which is largely around the area of battery management, telematics, ADAS, ABS, etc. And when it comes to the US, today, Mexico, as I understand, is about 2 to 5% more competitive than us. And that's largely coming from the fact that they are near-shored to the US. It's basically on freight, it's not on anything else. China is got a 20 to 25% disadvantage over us because of tariffs against them. But that puts us in a sweet spot. and we do believe that exports can continue to grow at the rate of 20 to 30%. And as part of their study, they met a lot of CPOs and 80% of them, as I understand, are open to looking at India as a sourcing base. A lot of them have already set up the IPOs. A lot of them are looking to set them up here. So we do believe that we're in a sweet spot where we can look at actually maximizing not just on the emerging tech and the emerging mobility components, but also on the classical traditional ones, because both of them are growing. So I mean, that's all I have to say, and I'll give it to Vinny, and then we'll open it up to questions.
It is that $100 billion definitely a tall order, but I think given the recommendations that we have in the study, we believe while it will be tough, but I think if the industry were to sort of stretch themselves, I guess maybe at this juncture, because the way the ecosystem has come by, we are largely focused on the OEMs, and many people do not actually have exports as a very definite part of their strategy. So one, we need to make exports integral to our strategy for growth, and then this also has to be a stretch target. We need to at least grow 5 to 10 times of what we are. And that apart, while over the last 5 odd years that ACMA and SIAM have been talking very significantly on localization, I guess that localization needs to get significantly deeper, not just at the component level, but also at the tooling level. And we have been talking about this, President has been talking about it very significantly at forums, saying that get down to the tooling level, at the engineering level, where a lot of localization needs to happen. And that apart, as the industry grows, we also would need a lot of support from the government in terms of the testing and validation infrastructure. So I guess we are well begun. The export, the cumulative growth rate of exports is greater than that on the import. So, and we are net export positive. So that's a great threshold to cross. But beyond this, we really need to carry on the momentum at a much accelerated pace. And I guess given the favorable policies of the government and that they give a very sound year to the automotive industry, we are hopeful that we'll be able to reach these targets. And we'll be happy to answer questions. We don't get great occasions to have a knowledge partner sitting by our side and answering questions. So, yeah, there we are. Yes, great, thank you.
I think as an ambition, we set ourselves, the next 5 to 7 years. Obviously, a lot has to happen in this. So once the enablers come into play, from there, I think 5 to 7 years is a stretch and bold enough mission for us to chase.
The kind of global uncertainties going on, and with the fear of reciprocal tariff, we still don't know what will happen. But how do you see that? I mean, how do you think Indian automobile exporter would navigate any challenge that could arise from the reciprocal tariff if implemented? And also, if you could share your thoughts on overall, what do you think would be the impact of the reciprocal tariff? And just one more question, as Ram mentioned in terms of China, slightly disadvantages over India. With US imposing more tariffs on Chinese goods, do you fear the dumping happening to India in terms of, automobile parts more being imported to India from China? Thank you.
US tariffs right now too premature to say what's going to happen. And another point to note is, while we sit here as the auto components industry, this is also a fairly heterogeneous industry, lots of product segments. So the way the impact will play out, our starting cost competitiveness varies a lot across product segments, right? And in our mind, I think right now the biggest advice for leaders in this space is not to react to headlines, right? A lot still needs to play out, a lot of clarity still needs to emerge at a product segment level, right? And that will determine strategies. Now, strategies could continue to be, export from India. It could involve internationalization strategies. It could involve additional markets and so on and so forth. But that de-averaged view, not to get sort of lost in a headline, is important. And some of these have to sort of play out and stabilize before we know what's the real impact on our base.
Yeah, you pretty much aligned.
Yeah, so I think he summed that up beautifully, but I have to say that it's very early days, and please do understand India has a very large captive market for itself. Our car penetration is 32 per 1,000, and the way we're developing and infrastructure is developing, there's a lot of opportunities within the country. And as far as exports are concerned, as he said, we need to work on quality, we need to work on skilling, we need to work on scale. So I think that's about it. Let's not react, it's too soon.
Hi, policies, what specific suggestion would you have for the government that right now in the emerging space, if I talk about electric vehicles, there are talks about entry of Tesla and also BYD now for both the leading players globally. However, both of them are facing certain challenges, their individual challenges. So can you just touch upon what kind of suggestions you have?
From the vantage point of this topic, one of the bigger, more immediate priorities is to see how can we get some of the larger global tier 1s to India. So again, if you were to take a list of the top 50, around about half of them have meaningful manufacturing in India, right? A lot of them, by the way, have presence in India in different ways. Some have GCCs in India. So they are already in some ways exporting services from India, right? The idea is how do we tap the full potential of this, make sure that India is a hub for design, manufacturing and services, all three. And some of these players are large, they also have an uplifting impact on the ecosystem. With all of these players, we need a bit of a bespoke approach to make sure that we're able to get the full potential of their presence in India across design, service and product. Right? And it won't be a single policy analog that says, okay, you give this incentive or you create this kind of a economic zone and everyone will start rushing to us, right? It will require a bit of a bespoke approach because it is a countable list of players. But the broader theme is for these 25 odd players, how do we get the full potential on service, product and design to India, and all three have to happen in India for us to be able to scale exports into the market. We can't just be doing GCC or we can't just be doing component exports. We need the design element also to come in. But once the three happen along with these 25 odd players, that's the big theme we have for.
Competitiveness that you showed with China, you have say 20% and that. So that are you factoring in what the potential increase on reciprocal tariff will be on Indian products?
We've not projected anything, right? So if there's a
that
tariff,
20% is that 20% is projecting that increase in tariff on Chinese goods, or at the
whatever tariffs exist today and there is clarity on, that's what's been factored in, right? So all the there's no speculation on what tariffs could be. For what it's worth, we are not in a position to speculate. If we were, it'll be a different world, right? So it is based on whatever exists today. Of course, can tariffs change? Those postures change? Yes. Will the relative cost competitiveness evolve in that? Of course it will. The position that you saw on that slide is basis tariffs as known and as visible today. I think across different product lines, typically the turnover to capex ratios will be anywhere from 3:1, 4:1 type of a range, right? So and by the way, at the same time in this period, like I just mentioned, there's a big domestic demand growth that's also going to come along, right? But for a moment, if I were to just look at just let's say 40 to 60 billion kind of export growth that we're talking on the traditional components. If you take a 3:1, 4:1 kind of a turnover to capex ratio, you can come to a number in terms of what kind of capex will be required. Obviously, again, this varies hugely by what kind of sector are we playing in, right? If we are in some bulky casting forging segments, the capex intensity is higher than versus let's say some more assembly oriented units. So, in all transparency, I have not done the math of what the exact investment is, but you can assume it to be like a third or a fourth of the turnover growth that we are predicting from exports.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.